Randy roll tree bowl. If it goes to script, one of them will win 61-62 because that's what Randy Ray wanted to win. These are both his ex-assistants playing against it at Wyoming. But it's time. It's time. Enough of this bullshit. This is a legendary player named Dillon Jones. He needs to have a breakout game. He already had the breakout game at St. Mary's. I talked to him. He says, you know, we're compare and contrast talking Damian Lillard. And I says, yeah, Lillard had some special games. Lillard had a lot of special games, like you. You can't draw a line one game. You know, the St. Mary's game that Dillon Jones had is legend. I think it's one of the greatest performances in the history of Weber State basketball. I mean, that's what he's got to do. That's what he's got to play. 29. Lillard had games like that. I mean, Lillard just took over games, but Randy would keep him squashed. This is a Randy Ray says. They got to quit squashing these fucking players. I think Lillard's best game was the bracket buster game in there. I was full of cancer. I just came out of the ball. I could barely walk with my nurse. But he had a lot of big games, you know, but so is Dillon Jones. I mean, this season needs to turn its fucking Titanic ass around. This team really should be maybe undefeated, maybe one loss. I mean, the whole scheduling of going back to fucking Newfoundland, Canada, I mean, two told me they were up to 3 a.m. twice. They play back to back to back. I mean, they play game against East Coast good teams. You know, lose a heartbreaker, then they play Yale, beat Yale. Then they got to get up on a Sunday morning, play again. Who the fuck does that? You know, the scheduling. The athletic department here has got this so fucked up. No wonder they threw them completely out of fucking sync. They played at St. Mary's. They have that legendary performance. I mean, that's one of the great performances by a basketball player in Weber State history. That's saying a lot. Harold Arsenault, the show, Eddie Gill, freaking Damian Lillard, Willie Sojourner, you know, all these greats, Justin Thigpen. I mean, and then he scores 29, 26, 26, and then got them all out of fucking sync. That whole fucked up road trip fucked him up for weeks. And then I've got tickets on the very front fucking row, $350 fucking dollars. For what? You seen this home schedule? So now they got the athletic department so fucked up, they're having to fucking fly all over to play fucking foreign games. They got nobody here. Every single home preseason game that gets a D2 school, I don't know why nobody's in there. Dillon Jones needs to just flick this fucking bullshit, these overcoachers off. I mean, Lillard, same thing. I mean, they kept Lillard like this. I think if Randy Ray would have cut Damian Lillard fucking loose, who knows how far they'd have run in the NCAA tournament. You know, I think he'd been the first round pick without that Anthony Johnson loss, which was a crazy fucking. Anthony Johnson died this year. But I look for Dillon needs to just break the fuck out. You know, and have these 26-point games, 29-point game, 30-point. Yeah, that's who he is. He's going to be a superstar in the NBA. There's no doubt in my fucking mind. He's going to be a giant superstar. And by the way, this whole do-it-all Dillon, that name's horrible. I named him Dillon Magic Jones when he was a freshman. If you haven't fucking been watching him, he plays exactly like fucking Magic Johnson. I remember when I told him I named him that. He says, God, you're really making my head big. I says, your head keeps growing, so does the rest of you. Fuck, he's a beast. He's a phenomenal fucking player. Don't let this fucking scheduling, this athletic department fucking ruin him. You know, the Randy Ray sisters are playing each other in Wyoming. He needs to break out. He needs to fucking, because, you know, this D2 schools here. It's bullshit, the fucking games they've got scheduled here. It's total bullshit. It actually pisses me off. Gotta go with that left, Jerry Carty. This overcoaching in this fucking league needs to fucking end. The Big Sky is they're 1-25 this century in the NCAA tournament. Fuck, Weber hasn't been to the tournament in 2016. They haven't won a fucking NCAA tournament against it in 1999. I mean, as Dillon Jones goes, look, he needs to go back to that he's developed. You know, I call him Dilly Magic Jones, but then I started calling him Dillon Dantley Magic Jones. That Dillon Jones, where he's developed at the rim, he'll go in with that big body, just like Dantley did the same thing. Dantley was a scoring machine, but Digger fucking used to let him go. Dantley's one of the most underrated fucking players in the history of the NBA. Fucking scoring machine. And Dillon's a better rebounder than him. But the way he would get to the rim and use that body and fight and get to the line, that's Dillon Jones. That's what they need to go back to. He needs to get 26 a game, 29 a game, 32 a fucking game. I'm telling you. That's what he needs to fucking do. He needs to break out. You know, this guy needs to have his legendary fucking season that he came back to have. You know, he's a legit top 5 fucking NBA draft choice. And there's no doubt in my fucking mind that he's going to be a superstar in the NBA. I really still think he's going to end up with the Lakers. I keep telling him that. So, Dylan Dantley, so tonight, don't fuck this season up. They're already fucking this season up. And it was the schedule in the athletic department. Who the fuck does that? Send him to St. Mary's, and that was a legendary performance. Him hitting that fucking shot. Fucking, I think, what did he get? 29? That was incredible. Or 26. I think it's one of the greatest performances by a Weber State basketball player in history. That's saying a lot, Harold Arsenault of the show. Is that the greatest performance in Weber State history? Harold Arsenault of the show. I was at that game when they beat North Carolina. Could be. Could very well be. So, Lillard's on one. Fucking Lillard's always been on one. You know. Because I know I dedicated the season to Anthony Johnson, who tragically died this year. Who had the greatest performance in the history of that bill. I'm saying a lot, Jerry. This overcoaching at Weber State needs to fucking end. I'm sick of it. You know, Zaire Porter, who got so overcoached here, was on, what did he put up? 57 in Europe the other day. Look what Jeremy Sieglin does over there. Look what Scotty Bamforth does. I mean, they just rip it up. I mean, they need to rip it up in here. Who the fuck put this home schedule together? All D2 schools? No wonder they're out of fucking sync. I mean, you need to get back in sync. When Dillon, the first game, went 13 for 13 for the line. Fuck, this team was leading the country in fucking free throw shooting. And then that schedule, it fucked them all up. Fuck, they're gone for 2 weeks, fly halfway. Well, not halfway. They fly all the way across the fucking country. Play back to back to back. Who the fuck sets a tournament like that? Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday morning against fucking top teams like that? Fuck. I mean, it ripped them up. Fucking NBA doesn't even do that shit. So, as this team go, Dillon Jones, this is your fucking team. This is his team. This fucking do it all, Dillon. What a fucking corky ass cliche. He ain't fucking doing it. He's much more than that. He's Dillon Magic Jones. That's his fucking name. I named him that. By the way, that's the last game that 88.1 The Beat did. I had that shirt on. That's the Anthony Johnson game. The grace. I had Lillard sign it for me. If Lillard would have won that game, there's no doubt in my mind that he would have been the number 1 pick in the NBA. Well, look what he does in the NBA. Fuck. Is he going to win it this year? I hope. You know, he ain't got Randy Rahe coaching him. He's averaging 25. He's the point in his career now that every night he's going to start breaking NBA records for, you know, it blows my mind. This guy's every bit fucking, he's a Lillard. Dillon. Like, well, fuck, how come they're not winning? They didn't win with Lillard. Lillard never played in the NCAA tournament. He needs to play in it. He promised me when he was a freshman, first time I talked to him, when I first met him, I says, he was a freshman, I says, Lillard never played in an NCAA tournament. What are you talking about? I said, no, they don't tell you this shit that. Weber State hasn't won an NCAA tournament. Randy Rahe never won an NCAA tournament. Hasn't won an NCAA tournament since 9. Well, I promise you we're going to get one. Well, this is your last chance, buddy. He's all that. Cut him fucking loose. I'm sick of this whole fucking Randy Rahe fucking shit. Quit coaching like Randy Rahe. You know, that place should be packed. You got a fucking NBA fucking first rounder who's going to be a superstar in the NBA. His team athletes, you know, Sidell Three's son, who's something else. They're full of load of fucking 2. I mean, but when you match him up against a D2 school, who the fuck's going to come pay fucking all that money to come watch a D? I mean, whoever did this it's disgraceful how they're ruining this team by this fucked up schedule. You know, they'll get back on. The next home game's a D2 school. I'm not shitting you. You know, so I look for him to have a huge one tonight. He's got to break back out. I talked to him about this. I'm like, this whole thing, triple-double shit, you know, no. I don't care what the NBA's telling you. I don't care what the scouts, whatever. You're not just this come off the bench utilitarian fucking size player. No. You're the type of player that could be an NBA superstar. He's a Magic Johnson type. He really is. He really is. You seen him at point? He plays center. He played just like Magic did. And so, turn him the fuck loose. He needs to start scoring fucking 25, 30 fucking points a game. Every fucking game. And this team will go fucking deep. You know, this whole shit where he gets 12 point, you know, trying to get triple. I mean, he's going to always get his rebounds. He's a rebounding fucking machine. But he needs to get at the rim. He needs to get at the fucking rim and do his Dantley thing. You know, where he gets at the rim, fucking fights, fucking gets the Bauer back, fights it back, and fucking and one. You know, if you're going to name him something, it should be and one. Dillon. He's the master at it. He's Adrian Dantley mixed in with fucking Magic Johnson. He's going to be an NBA superstar. They need to start playing him like he's an NBA superstar. Because he is. We're not going to get another one like that, you know, for a long fucking time. You know, so don't blow this fucking season. Randy Rahe fucking, oh God, don't even get me going. They're both his assistants playing at Wyoming. I look for Dillon to have a huge fucking game tonight. No snow, very little snow in Snow, Utah. Fucking D2 games a whole preseason. Who the fuck put the schedule together? All right, Dillon, do your thing. Stand tuning.